Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade to M3 control arms on your E90 BMW. So I got this as a complete conversion kit for the front end. Let's get it unboxed. These are made by TRW. They are the original equipment supplier for these M3 control arms from the factory, but they just grind off the BMW symbol here. You can get them aftermarket for cheaper, but they are truly OEM quality. So these will fit the 1 Series, E82 and E87, etc. They fit all E9X models, provided you have a rear wheel drive. So you'll see a big difference in this lower arm here. It will provide more negative camber, about 0.75 degrees, and it just changes the suspension geometry considerably. So it has more robust ball joints. These bushings aren't rubber, they're spherical, so they will pivot and move with the car for more precision. And they have a plastic isolator so that it's not very harsh. So same story here with this rod. The ball joint's going to be more robust. What's different is on this end, you see this bushing is solid. It's not fluid filled, so you'll get a little bit more precision out of this, and it's not as likely to fail. The best part about this kit is it's cheaper than the original OEM parts, so when your car's due for replacement, when they finally do wear out, you might as well upgrade. The kit comes with a new headlight leveler arm, which goes on the driver's side if you have xenon headlights, because the original arm clips onto the control arm versus this where it bolts into the control arm. As you can see, it's going to bolt in right here. So this is supposed to provide you with increased steering wheel feedback, along with improved handling, less understeer, improved turn in and on-center feel, as well as good chassis balance. From the factory, your lower control arm here would just be rubber, similar to this over here, and you will get a bunch of bushing, deflection, and slop in the handling of the car. You know, they do that so you get more comfort for your standard 3 Series. And here's me demonstrating how it moves. As you can see, it almost would seem like a super worn out bushing normally. But this is where all the magic happens. This is what makes the car handle more like an M car, is on this. It's the geometry of this, the length of it, and most importantly, the spherical bushing. It's metal, but you still have the plastic isolation, so it's not super harsh. You'll get better tire contact, etc., and very little, if any, excess wear on your tires. So the main point of this is to make your car feel a little more agile or a little bit more like an M car. You can buy this kit for under $400. I'll put a link in the description if you guys are interested. Now let's get the car jacked up and get these installed. We're gonna go after this lower arm first. These are both 18s. If you have an impact, will make a big difference here. When putting the new arm in, I would put this in first. So yes, I use the bolt to kind of drive things into position. That may not be advised depending on the condition of your threads, and you could risk stripping them or ruining them, so keep that in mind. But I mostly align things with a screwdriver before I let that screw go through. Now normally you have to put the car to ride height before you would tighten this down, because it is going to be under tension if you tighten it while the car is raised, but given this can move freely, it's a spherical bushing, it doesn't matter for this particular one. But with this one, if you tighten it in the wrong position, you're twisting the bushing. You're just basically twisting on the rubber continuously while the car's sitting at ride height. But this one, it moves freely. Now, if you compare these arms, they look very different. Different shape, different everything, different geometry completely, different bushing. This is where the major change happens in this particular arm. It comes with a new nut. So officially you would replace this bolt and then you would torque it to 50 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. But if you're reusing, it works out to about 75 foot-pounds or 74 foot-pounds. What you're supposed to do on this inner one is torque to 122 foot-pounds while trying to hold this steady. That's quite difficult, so I'm going to use my torque arm, which is set to about 120, and just use my impact. But keep that in mind that you may have to hold this steady somehow, jack it up, secure it however you can before you can torque that without the wheel just turning on you while you're trying to torque that down. The impact didn't really work because it's a nylon nut. So I'm using a T40 with a 21 wrench. So I gave it a final torque with my impact, which was on a 120 foot-pound impact bar. So that will set that to the right torque without needing to struggle trying to hold this. But you do have to start it with the T40 in the middle and a 21 wrench to get everything drawn up into position to be able to finalize that torque, because it's a nylon nut and the impact will struggle against that. It will just vibrate. Next up, take a look how that bushing looks. It's quite different from the one that we're gonna put in. It's a little bit hard to make up, but my bushing is completely shot. It's cracked on the bottom here and there. But this looks very different than the M3 bushing, you'll see. As you can see, it looks quite different. And I can't move that by hand at all, it's solid. Versus, or just do it fairly with one finger to compare. Big difference. On this side, the nut is captive, it just kind of clicks on. So you don't really have to hold that if it's not corroded. Now on this side, before I tighten that upper bolt over here, I'm going to bring this to be basically flat or straight parallel with a jack to be able to tighten that up, because that will damage this bushing if we tighten it up as is. So we'll torque this to 74, and you pretty much, once you almost start lifting up the car from that, you know that you've gotten to the point where you have it at right height for the most part. You can also measure the distance from the middle of the hub to the fender top. I think it's like 18 something inches. You can look that up. That's another way to do it. So that's it for this side. We're gonna repeat on the other side. The only difference on the other side is gonna be the inclusion of the headlight leveling arm. Most of you guys will probably have xenon headlights. So I'm gonna get the wheel put back on and we'll move over to the other side. Just to put things into perspective, check this out. It's got free range of motion. That's really gonna help with precision. It's got the wheel kicked out a little bit more from the back end, and it's got the wheel kind of pushed more like this in its orientation for more of an initial tighter turn in. Everything's preloaded a little bit better for more steering feel, just a more precise ride. You'll probably sacrifice a little bit of ride comfort, just keep that in mind, but nothing major from what I've heard. And tire wear is actually almost non-existent. There's nothing to worry about there. In terms of alignment, you're supposed to get the car, from what I've read, aligned based on it still being a 335i, but aiming for between -1.5 and 2 negative camber, because you can achieve close to -2 now because of this arm, because it adds about 0.7. To the negative camber. You don't need any adjustable camber pace or anything to get that aggressive of a camber. So you should get an alignment after you do this, but you don't have to worry about telling them, hey, align it as an M3 or this or that. Everything else would be 335i, except it's going to show out of tolerance for the camber, and you just let the guys know you're okay with -1.5 to -2. I think a lot of guys are doing -1.8. But that's the main thing I wanted to show you. The fact that it moves like this is interesting. The fact that it kicks the tire out from the bottom, and the fact that it moves the whole suspension from where it originally sits, so everything's kind of just hunkered down and under tension, is pretty neat. Even just looking at that versus looking at that, just such a difference. So as you can see on this side, the level sensor is clipped on to the control arm and is incompatible with the new setup. So we'll just take that off. If you're reusing these, you wouldn't want to keep spinning it like that, but I don't really care since they're old and worn out. Here's what it looks like when it's completely failed. Alright, so I'm gonna get that under tray reinstalled and then we'll conclude. Alright guys, that'll conclude this video showing you how to upgrade to M3 control arms on your E9X or E82 BMW. If this is the first video you're catching of mine, please consider subscribing. I do upload regularly. Thanks for watching.